Hey, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away. It's Nadine here. Welcome back to the podcast. Last week, we talked about your very first knitting project, what to make, what to buy, how to start, all the good stuff, and why it's important to pick the right project for your first project. This week, we are going to go a little deeper because once you know the basics, the next question is, what do you actually knit when you're stressed, when you just need to reset that nervous system? And I have a couple of really fun things for you in store today. So let's dig into it. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast for moms who want to knit instead of scroll. I'm Nadine, and I help overwhelmed moms swap doom scrolling for knitting so you can finally have 20 minutes of peace that don't involve a screen. Whether you're brand new to knitting or getting back into it after years away, this show will teach you how to use knitting as a tool to calm your nervous system, set boundaries with your phone, and reclaim time for yourself without the guilt. No fancy techniques, no complicated patterns, just some practical tips, real talk about stress and motherhood, and simple ways to make knitting a part of your everyday life. So put down the phone, grab your needles, and let's knit the stress away, one stitch at a time. Okay, we are back and for another round on the podcast. So excited that you are here. And today we're going to talk about what to knit when you're stressed. And the answer is simple, something mindless. But I don't mean mindless like boring, right? More like mindless in the sense that your hands already know what to do without your brain having to figure it all out as you are knitting, right? It's not all knitting is the same. And this is also the type of knitting that you do want to, start with when you're relatively new or when you are like me, who's getting back into knitting or did get back into knitting after a long time away from it. And you're kind of rusty, right? But not all knitting is the same. There's a lot of like very advanced knitting and, some knitting that isn't maybe as advanced or that you can totally tackle even as a beginner, but that you still need to focus on very heavily because there might be color changes or there might be different patterns within the pattern, like different stitches that you have to combine a certain way. You may have to drop some stitches. There's a drop stitch that, you have to pay attention to when and where that happens. One of my many projects that I'm currently doing is a lot of color work and a lot of different techniques that are kind of alternating throughout. And I have to pay super attention to what I'm doing there. And I cannot do that on the fly. I can't do that when I'm out and about, when I'm just having a 5-minute break somewhere. So that is not the pattern for that. That one I reserve for when I know I'm going to be able to sit here for a half an hour or even longer than that. And no one is going to come running at me with 15 questions every 5 minutes because that would just throw me off. And maybe I'm very one-track mind. Like I need to focus on one thing at a time. And maybe, you don't have to do that and you can be, interrupted and you can jump right back into it, but that's not me. So when I know that there's going to be interruptions or when I'm kind of halfway in and out, or when I just want to relax and not even have the, added, I don't want to call it stress because it's not stressful to focus on a knitting project. But when you're already at capacity in your brain and you're kind of like, look, I'm done for today. I just want to veg and do nothing. A mindless project is still going to be so beneficial for your nervous system, especially if you're doing it as an alternative to scrolling on your phone. So let's get into this episode. I have 5 projects that will hit this sweet spot for your knitting project, simple enough to be calming, but interesting enough to keep you coming back. So let's get into all those. But real quick, before we get into the projects, let me just explain why mindless is actually what you're going for. When you're stressed, and this is again a little sciencey over here again, which I find so fascinating. So I always want to kind of touch on that. When you're stressed, your prefrontal cortex in your brain, the part of your brain that does the planning and the decision making and is kind of like the, command center, I guess, is kind of running on fumes and you're like, done. The last thing it needs is a knitting pattern that requires you to count to 47 and remember whether you're on the right side, on the wrong side, or whether it's this color or that color. In my pattern currently, there's 5 different colors. So I have them coded and it's color A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E. That's 5. And I have to constantly reference my pattern and my journal in order to not get distracted or not get, use the wrong color. It's not that that's not relaxing. I still love doing it and I enjoy it. It's just a different kind of relaxing, right? And the I need to calm my nervous system type of knitting is more rhythmic and repetitive and the same motion over and over. Your hands are moving in a pattern that becomes automatic. We talked about this in the last episode. If you missed that episode, it was a lot of fun. Go back and listen to it. It was episode 109. Because when knitting feels automatic, your brain can exhale. Your brain can stop problem solving. It can stop scrolling through tomorrow's to-do list. It can just be in the rhythm of the knitting that you're doing. And as much as that sounds boring, it really isn't, especially in those moments. And this is why I always recommend to have multiple knitting, even for a beginner, just have 2 projects going. One where you're like, you know what, this is my challenge work. This is where I'm really going to dig in and I'm going to focus on it. And I may or may not get it right. And this is where I'm practicing to get better. And then you have the one where you're like, yep, got that one down. I know exactly what to do. I have one like that currently. I actually have 2. I'm trying to think what the other one is. I got so many going. I'm starting to lose track. But I'm making a beanie and it's just in the round. It is a 2x2 rib pattern. So it's 2 knits, 2 purls, and it's just a consistent in the round until I get to the top where I have to shape. But until then, it's pretty mindless. And I know the stitches in my sleep. So it's great for hanging out with the family and still talking, or when my kids are doing school and I have to help them and I'm still knitting because it's just easy, right? So that's the kind of pattern that you want for those moments, okay? All right, the projects that I'm about to share are all designed to get you in that rhythm as I can't speak today, as fast as possible with as little mental overhead as possible. So, we are going to go right into the projects, and I am going to link some examples of this. These are not, set in stone. You can go and search for different ones in the same, I guess, broad category, but I did find some examples for you that are suitable for beginners, but also really fun for someone who isn't a beginner. Just because we're talking about beginner-friendly projects doesn't mean that someone who is totally advanced can't make that too as a mindless project for the in-between, right? The between the more complicated stuff, the lace and the color work and the decreases and the increases. Okay, project 1. I picked a garter stitch dishcloth, or it could also be a coaster because, size-wise, they're pretty similar. You can use it for whatever you want. You can also use it as to put underneath like a pan or a pot or something else in your kitchen. And I did mention this last week in the other episode, but it does deserve its own spotlight here again because it is genuinely one of the most meditative things that you can knit because it's a square, it knits up really quickly, and garter stitch means that you just knit every single stitch in every single row. So you don't have to purl, which is the other knitting technique or stitch. You don't have to switch anything. You can switch colors if you like, but of course that's not required. But you're just knitting back and forth and back and forth. And it creates a very squishy, ridged texture that's, in my opinion, very satisfying to work up. I may have mentioned this in the past, but I made an entire cardigan out of this stitch. And I just love the thing. I love the texture, love wearing it. And because this is a very small project, you get this dopamine hit really, really quickly from finishing something, right? And even from just finishing, if you finish a row, you get a little bit of that too. I always like, ooh, next row. Ooh, next row. So this is definitely my go-to recommendation for anyone who needs to decompress fast. Pick it up, knit a couple of rows, put it down, and you're done. Or make one, use a different color, make another one, and make a whole set of coasters. How fun, right? That's something I would look forward to completely. As a matter of fact, I have a pattern that it's a pattern for a few different coasters. So they have a couple of different techniques in there and just the placement of the stitches changes so that it creates a different pattern on each coaster, I might pull that out and actually start that too, because that would be a cute gift for pretty much anybody, right? Project number 2 is a simple seed stitch or a stockinette washcloth. Could also, again, be a dishcloth, whatever you want to use it for. But the point here is that the stockinette or the seed stitch are just a slight bit of a step up from garter stitch, because you have to alternate the knit and the purl stitch now. So like I was saying, in my beanie, I do 2 knit and 2 purl stitches, and it just keeps continuing that way. For the seed stitch, you have to knit and purl across the row. And for a stockinette, you would do one side knit stitch, and then the back side would be the purl stitch, so that you create that nice, that triangle looking stockinette stitch on the front. But once you get the pattern or that like rhythm locked in for that particular pattern, it also becomes completely automatic, just like I mentioned in my beanie. It creates a really fun texture as well, the seed stitch, but also the stockinette. I really like most of them. There's a moss stitch too, which is similar to the seed stitch. And they're all just made from the same 2 stitches. You just have to combine them in a different way in order to create that look, right? But I really like to see different, patterns or structures, I guess textures coming out of the same 2 stitches just by combining them a different way. So it's maybe a tad more interesting than just the garter stitch, because you have to do a different stitch every here or there. But again, totally mindless once you get going, once you know exactly what you're knitting, what stitch it is, because again, you don't have to decrease, increase, change any colors, count anything. You don't have to count. I think counting is probably what throws me off the most and what is the least mindless part of a project to me. But if you have been knitting for a few weeks now, or you want something that just has a little bit more texture and interest, this might be a good fit for you. And check out the link that I put down in the show notes so that you can, check out the pattern that I picked. And again, if you don't like that one, just go and search Etsy or search Ravelry for whatever you like. Project 3 that I came up with is a chunky ribbed headband. And I hosted a workshop last year, a live workshop, where we knitted the one that I actually put in the show notes here. And it's one of my personal favorites for any occasion, really, because it knits up super fast. It's small-ish, right? It's a pretty small project. You can make it for anybody. Well, I guess any girls for the most part. But you don't have to cast on a lot of stitches. And then it's just a simple ribbing pattern. Knit 2, purl 2, very easy, very rhythmic again. And for most of you, you'll be done in just a few hours. If you literally can only knit 5 to 10 minutes a day, it might take you a couple days, but it's so fast because it's chunky too. So you'll use a little bit thicker yarn and of course also bigger needles, and it knits up super, super quick. For me, the speed of completing a pattern does matter, especially when you feel kind of rushed or stressed, because it is satisfying to see something get completed in a weekend or even in just one evening. It really depends. This one you could knit while you watch a movie with your family. But sometimes when something takes forever, it's, we lose interest sometimes. And another cure, once again, I do it all the time, is just cast on another project. But headbands are super useful, very cute. You can wear it for yourself. You can make it as a gift. I actually donated the ones that I made during the workshop. When I was teaching the workshop, I made like 2 ahead of time to showcase them. And then I made one while I was teaching the workshop. So I just donated them to our library because they were collecting handmade items for people in need. And I thought that's such a great way to, you doing something great for yourself, but you're also doing something really awesome for your community. Okay, project number 4, a stockinette cowl. A cowl, just a very simple 1 round big tube scarf that you knit in the round. And stockinette is important here because when you knit in the round and you're knitting stockinette stitch, you do not have to do the wrong side of the pattern or the fabric, meaning that you can skip the purl stitch. You only need to knit in the round, and because you're always on the right side knitting, always just doing the knit stitch, and it still creates stockinette. So cool. So for a stockinette, and then you just would knit every single round until you get to the width of the scarf that you would like. And that's it. Then you would be done. And like I mentioned in the last episode, my preferred knitting needles are circular needles no matter what. For this one, you will have to have circular needles. But again, don't even go for the straight needles because you can use your circular needles for any of the projects in here. If they are knit in the round or not, does not matter. Okay, and for this one, I also put an example pattern in the show notes. They all lead to Etsy because I found it easiest just to go to the same place. But look around. There's always, suggestions in the bottom. You just need to make sure that you're actually buying a pattern and not a finished product, but you'll also be able to tell by the price difference, usually. Our last project number 5, the never-ending scarf. And I called it that not because it's bad or not because it's actually never-ending, but because it's so perfect for stress knitting. It's a simple, long scarf. It's chunkier yarn too, which means it can knit up quickly, but it depends on how long you want your scarf. But there's no pressure to finish it either because it just keeps growing and you can start it now and make it for next winter. Because who cares, right? This is knitting your stress away. This is not adding more stress to your life through knitting, okay? So whenever you want to put this thing down, you know exactly where to pick it up again because it is super simple. And if you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have a lot of knitting time, I knit very slowly, but you want to make one like this as a gift, start now. Start now. And then just take your time. And it will be the perfect thing that you can pick up whenever. There's no, oh my gosh, where was I? What row am I on? What's my count? Which color is next? There's none of that. And of course, there are some tricks to keep you on track, even for the more complicated patterns, so that you also can pick those up later on again and you're not getting confused as to where you left off. But we'll cross that bridge in a different episode, okay? I found this adorable, chunky, long scarf that I'm linking up below. I really love it. I think I might actually get that pattern myself. But this would be the perfect pattern or project to have in a bag and just take it along with you wherever you go, wherever you have a few minutes, waiting in the doctor's office. For me, it's waiting at my girl's dance studio or at my son's journalism club and just hang out and sit in the back and knit away. But yeah, no counting, just keep knitting. And that's the whole project. So, which project fits where you are right now? That is the question. If you are a complete beginner, I would still say, I said it in the last episode, start with the dishcloth or the coaster. It's not too simple. It's probably exactly where you need to be in order to make something that you can actually use and to have a really awesome experience and a great I made this moment, because that's what it's all about. If you've been knitting for a few weeks and you have done something in garter stitch and you might be like, oh, I could use a little challenge, you can go ahead and do the seed stitch or the stockinette pattern that we talked about, or you can go ahead and do the ribbed headband, the chunky headband, which is amazing too. And again, they use both the knit and the purl stitch, but they're still pretty simple so that you can get in that repetitive motion really quickly. And yeah, if you want to have something that you can actually wear, not just use in your home, the headband, the cowl, or the scarf that I mentioned at the end, super quick to finish and useful and wearable. I love it. I absolutely love it. And then, of course, the last one we talked about, if you do need something that you want to pick up, put down whenever you can and not really think much about it, most of these are good for that. But the scarf is probably the best one because it does have a bit of length, so it will take longer to complete and you can just kind of chip away at it for a little bit longer. The right project is the one you'll actually start. So please, again, I say this all the time, but do not let perfection stand in the way of you getting started. If you feel like you want to chat, and you want to talk about which one is the best option for you, I am always available in my DMs on Instagram. My handle is at @theknittingmamas_, and I would love to help you pick one because I would love to help you start one, and then I want to see what you're making. So here's your homework for this week. Pick one of the 5 projects, just one, not all 5 at once. You can buy them all, but don't start all 5 just for now. And before Friday, either find the yarn that you already have that could work, or grab it from either Amazon or Lion Brand or your craft store, whichever one you have, and let's get started. If you want, I would love if you, once you get started, or maybe if you're even in the progress of still gathering your tools, snap a picture, post it in your Instagram stories, and tag me at @theknittingmamas_. I would love to see what you're up to, what you're making. I would love to encourage you. And if you are still figuring out the basics and you're kind of like, still don't know what to get and where to buy it, my free guide called Swap Scrolling for Stitching has everything you need to get started. It has the list of tools that I highly recommend. It also then has a plan for you to actually work your knitting time into your day if you're feeling like, look, I can't add anything else to my life. And it comes with a whole page of knitting lingo cheat sheet or cheat code so that you can decipher what these patterns are actually saying. You can find everything at theknittingmamas.com. And there's also the links to my YouTube channel if you're feeling like, okay, I need a refresher, or, I have never even touched these needles before. Show me how to do this. You can find everything from casting on all the way to casting off and beyond on that YouTube channel. And if you try one of these projects again, I would love to see it. So please go ahead, tag me on Instagram, tag me in a story, or find me in my DMs, and I'm here to help you and here to cheer you on. So let's start a project. I can't wait to see or hear what you're about to make. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If I don't see you around in my DMs, hopefully I will hear you here back again next Wednesday for another episode on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're ready to swap your screen time for some peace, I made you a free guide called Swap Scrolling for Stitching. It'll teach you what to buy, how to start, and how to build the habit, even if you've never touched needles before. And if you already knit or crochet, this will help you build that habit into your life consistently. Link is in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you'd leave a quick review. This helps other stressed moms find the show and discover that there's a better way to unwind than scrolling Instagram at 10 p.m. Follow me on Instagram at @theknittingmamas_ for daily tips, and I'll see you next week for another episode.